they were related to the Greeks. That is massive. This is math, not only also because it's a huge blow to all those that were pushing for this kind of nonsense. I feel so vindicated, guys. I feel so vindicated. Honestly, this is massive. This is massive. Yeah, that's me right there. That's me right there. Finally. And this is... it's gracious. Man, I feel so vindicated. One after the other. The other day, a study from the University of Florence proved me right. And today, this... Man, this is my time to shine. Let's continue, Brown University. You got my attention. Some of them also showed varying degrees of North African ancestry, especially those who died after 400 BC. Absolutely makes sense, because clearly that's where they lived, at least in this area, I would imagine. Reflecting the growing influence of Carthage in the Mediterranean. Absolutely. Open quotes, that seems to show there were close connections between the Punic settlements in Sardinia, Sicily, Greece, as I was saying, North Africa, Ibiza, and Spain. Van Dolmen, close quotes, open quotes again. Their settlements seem to be more connected with each other via maritime routes. Yes, I would say so. If the DNA is in fact similar, I mean, we probably need more samples to be completely definitive when it comes to the expanse of all of this, but at the core, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It does. Then with the local neighbors in their hinterlands. Ooh, wait, I need to read this one again. Their settlements seemed to be more connected with each other via maritime routes. So there is more connection between this maritime routes than with their local neighbors in the hinterlands. These are the hinterlands, guys. Africa is the hinterlands. I was right. I was right. My video on Hannibal, ancestry, and all that, and I say I was right. Boom, Brown University, go for it. Man, this is what a day. Ooh, what a day. GG. It's comparable to what happened with early white settlers in North America. Right. The colonies were more closely connected to each other than they were to people in the interior parts of the continent. Yes, absolutely, of course. There was a connection. Yeah, you have early white settlers coming from Europe, whether it be Dutch, whether it be English, whether it be Germans, whatever it is. And then they settled in North America. Of course, they're going to be closely connected because they share a common culture rather than being connected with people in the interior parts of the continent, meaning in that case Native Americans. Yeah, sure, I mean, Native Americans wanted to mind their business and do their own thing. They're not as connected. It makes perfect sense. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So basically these people are coming from the Levant, but then as hundreds of years pass by, and I mean, it makes sense due to the fact that, you know, you've got the entirety of the Anatolian Peninsula, you've got power of Greece, you've got Sicily, and Greek Sicily, in fact, and all these things. And then, yeah, basically they expand, they grow. I'm surprised there isn't any Celtic connection to this area, to be honest. But since we do know that there were at least some Celtic surnames in Carthage are present. But then again, if the DNA study doesn't show Celtic, I guess it was probably a minority. But yeah, it makes sense that these people are here, initially Semitic in origin. Then basically they become Greeks at this point. Greeks, native Sicilians, and then, yeah, they connect among themselves rather than connecting with people. I still believe that, at least by the time Carthage had fully grown, there would have been some, for instance, black people living in Carthage, but I always said it was going to be a minority. DNA proves it. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much. Okay. When exactly did Punic people's Levantine root disappear? That's a very good question. Van Dommelen said researchers may never know for sure. Before the 6th century, it was standard cultural practice to cremate the dead, leaving behind no trace of DNA. Right. Open quotes. The funerary rituals seem to have changed in the 6th century BC when we start to see more people burying their dead. Close quotes. So, open quotes again, that raises new questions. When did that genetic fingerprint disappear? When and why was the Canaanite Phoenician culture and language adopted by people without any detectable Levantine ancestry? Close quotes. It is a very good question, but as I say, it's a really difficult one to answer, because this entire area, as I always say, has always been multicultural and multi-ethnic, Egypt included. So this makes perfect sense. And not to mention the way the Egyptians represent, for example, the Libyans, as we always see that wall, very light-skinned, makes sense now. Now, as I was saying, this is the full study. Punic people were genetically diverse with almost no Levantine ancestors. That's crazy. Almost no Levantine ancestors at all. It's crazy. Well, I guess it makes sense if they sever connections with the motherland. So like imagine that the initial group of people, we don't know how many they were when they moved, Dido or Dido, the mythological founder of Carthage, the queen, we don't know how many that would have been. Probably still quite substantial, because it immediately became an important settlement and then started trading, so there must have been substantial. But of course, if you have hundreds of years and the connection now it's gone, then clearly the more people go, and the more people from Greece, from the Anatolian Peninsula, from Sicily, from all these areas start together with them and mingling and joining the town and the area together with some locals from North Africa, then it makes sense that after a few hundred years, the initial Semitic DNA is, it's still almost entirely gone. It's kind of crazy. And so it says here, just for the beginning, the maritime Phoenician civilization from the Levant transformed the entire Mediterranean during the first millennium BC. However, the extent of human movement between the Levantine Phoenician homeland and Phoenician Punic settlements in the central and western Mediterranean has been unclear in the absence of comprehensive ancient DNA studies. Here, we generated genome-wide data for 210 individuals, including 196 from 14 sites traditionally identified as Phoenician and Punic in the Levant, North Africa, Iberia, Sicily, and just like we read earlier on. Very, very technical. Just to read you a little bit here, the raw DNA sequences for individuals newly sequenced in this study are deposited in the European Nucleotide Archive under accession number PRJEB86313. Their processed genotype data is pseudohaploid. Eigenstract format can be obtained from the Harvard Dataverse repository. And here is the link. So if we open this link, what this means is that you can go and check the data. You can have the full description and study it yourself. Like if you want to double check, if you want to do further analysis, see there's access data set right here. You can download the zip, and which I think it's fantastic that they are allowing everyone to check this out and to confirm their analysis. And here it says that the newly reported data can be accessed from the European Nucleotide Archive using accession number, and here it is. So all of this to say, this is open source. Open source, guys. Appreciate that. The archaeologists have some educated guesses. Perhaps many of the first Levantine settlers married people from the islands they colonized, and Punic people's Levantine ancestry diminished quickly as a result. Very likely, even as they continued practicing Levantine traditions. Yes, because the culture stayed, the language stayed, makes sense. Perhaps those early colonizers weren't all Levantine. The seafaring settlers may have been a mix of Eastern and Western Mediterranean people. So basically he's bringing up the idea. I'm surprised he didn't get cancelled by saying this, but hey man, I appreciate you. So that takes some courage. So basically he's saying, yeah, a mix of, so the original Phoenicians may have been a mix of Western and Eastern, in the sense that maybe initially they were from that area, but sure. In the years to come, Van Dommelen and his colleagues will search for answers. He's already working with Spanish peers on an examination of the cultural changes Punic settlements underwent in the 8th, 7th, and 6th century BC in modern-day Spain. And he'll continue a long-standing evaluation, an ancient settlement settlement of Sardinia. Yeah, Sardinia is another completely different chapter. Not for this, but there is so much to say when it comes to Sardinia, because islands have a lot of dominations and a lot of movement of people and cultures, of course. Phoenicians, colonizers, influence. Yeah, I mean, my town, Palermo, was founded by Phoenicians. So I am interested in knowing what Phoenicians looked like, spoke like, thought like, their culture, because they are the ones that founded. Open quotes. Over the course of a century, all of the pottery they used for eating and drinking changed. Close quotes. They produced, open quotes again, they produced it locally with their own clay, but they started using different techniques. Well, that's normal. It's still a Phoenician style, yes. And then he closes by saying, but we have evidence that the ancient Mediterranean was a big interconnected web of people and ideas. It wasn't just Greeks and Romans, it was a lot more diverse and a lot more complicated. Well, of course, it's not just Greeks and Romans, but I mean, in these situations, you're getting like Greeks, Sicilians, and Anatolians a little bit, basically end up creating merging with the original Semitic. They create basically a new people. That's the idea. Absolutely fascinating. All right, well, this was fascinating. I hope that you enjoyed it. Big news. Big news. And I'm happy to report. Man, I was right. Have a good one.